Hi, friends, and welcome back. I am so happy that you are here. Welcome back to the Play Along Journal series. This is a series that I am hosting here on YouTube where I'm working through two handmade art journals from beginning to end. So, this really shows you how I take two similar spreads and go in two separate directions. And hopefully, this can inspire you in your own journals that there really is no right or wrong. You can just go with whatever your instincts are telling you, and it will be the right direction. So I'm starting out here in my mustard little play along journal, and I have a little piece of snippet roll left over from something else, basically just a couple scraps of fabric, and I'm wanting to add some hand stitching to this, partly for the decoration and partly just to hold it together better. It looks like it was a strip that didn't have much machine stitching on it for some reason. But one of the ways that I like to use my snippet rolls is by adding in some feature hand stitching, and this can really be a nice way to use them. So I believe that there's still a couple snippet rolls left up in my shop if that's something that you're wanting to explore with. I really enjoy making those fabric messy snippet rolls. They can just add a really fun touch to your journal pages and other things as well. So I want to add some light onto the right side of this page. I think it's really fun to work on darker pages. It seems to be a little bit more unusual than your classic white page that may be in your journal or notebook. But it is important to bring in some light to that dark page as well. And I think the contrast then is really beautiful when you can have the light and the dark playing together. So I'm just drying this a little bit so that I can move forward. Gesso is really nice because it seems to dry quicker than paint does, especially if you're using black gesso, that dries really quickly. So I just did a thin layer to start, and now I'm actually coming back in with a little bit more. I wanted it to be a little bit more opaque. Sometimes when we pile on that paint in just one layer, it dries kind of not fast enough, and then if you even hit it with the heat gun, it almost dries the top layer, but there's still like mushiness underneath. So sometimes if you do multiple thin layers, that can actually work a lot better, and you can achieve maybe the results that you're looking for even faster. So you would think one coat is quicker than two, but sometimes those thicker coats are really difficult to dry. One of the reasons I do like a thicker coat sometimes is if I am going to scrape into it like with a wooden skewer and I want the resist there. Sometimes a thicker coat can be a little bit better. I'm using black gesso here to make some fingerprint marks and some mark making, and going in and kind of making that left side a little bit grungy as well, and actually adding some onto the right side also, so that almost looks now like it was coming through from underneath the white that I had done previously. It's not always important to completely dry whatever you're doing before moving on. In fact, a lot of times I don't, partly because I'm impatient. And the other part is just because sometimes it creates more of a messy look when you don't let things completely dry. And then things are able to kind of interact and flow a little bit with each other. So it really just depends the look that you're going for a specific spread. And sometimes it depends on the materials that you use as well. I'm pretty confident where I want this little snippet roll piece, and so I'm going to use some Fabri-Tac glue and glue that down. This glue holds really well, especially when you're using anything that's fabric. A hot glue gun would work fine as well, or you could even just staple it or stitch it right on the page. Play around with whatever works the best for you, and in fact, regular glue may work just fine in something like this. Because it's an art journal and you're going to be closing the journal, the pages then would kind of end up binding it together and holding that in place. But I like to just be careful, I guess, and that little bit extra security eases my mind that it's not going to move or fall out of place or anything like that. So I just know that it's secure. But if you're one that wants to kind of put it down and then move it around, the Fabri-Tac is not the glue for you, because it will bond it in place too quickly, and then you're kind of left with a mess if you don't just let it be after you put it down. I'm taking a step back, looking at my page, seeing what it needs next. Sometimes we kind of have to let the page talk to us, take a breather, and look at it from a different angle. So a lot of times I'll actually like tip my journal back so that I can see it in a little bit different light. This can really help, because if we're just so close to the page, our nose is right in it, it's hard to get that perspective. And if you're really having trouble knowing where to go with your page next, maybe flip to a new page and work on a new page, or walk away, do something else, come back, or switch to a different activity. Sometimes it's easier to have that instinct of what to do when we take that little break and move away from it and come back and see it with fresh eyes. So I love the texture that was added on the right side with that snippet roll, and I want to add a little bit of something onto the left. I feel like it needs something, and so I'm actually just taking a clump of leftover threads. I keep a jar on my table for all of the scraps of thread that you would normally just throw away, but I like to use this to add texture. I make little thread bead baubles with it. So a couple different things. It's easy then to have in my jar. So I just took a clump and I kind of sorted it into just the black and whites, because that's what I wanted. But you could take a random clump too that had all of the other colors, and that's a fun approach as well. So I'm using that same glue to kind of tack down. I don't need it to be perfectly tacked down. I like the texture that's added when there's still some loose bits and stuff like that, but I don't want to worry about it falling off. So I just use that glue to secure it into place. So I'm really happy with the way this one turned out. For me, you can never go wrong with a black and white spread. I feel like it's always beautiful. The contrast, the juxtaposition of the two is really, really fun. So I'm going to start in here and show you the other version of this spread. And now I am working inside my teal journal, and I did not work on these back to back. So this is just the inspiration that I had when I saw this page again. I actually completed the mustard journal long before I worked in the teal journal. So it's kind of fun that my instincts were along the same lines in regards to adding that white gesso onto the black paper. And so I think by doing that, you just start to trust your instincts more and more. Not that every page that you do that has a black page in it has to have that white gesso, but sometimes we just want to trust whatever our instincts are telling us and not fight against it so much. So I was kind of challenging myself in this one to add in some more color. So basically when I've added color in this journal so far, primarily it's been just those teal colors. I'm trying to challenge myself to get out of that. I work monochromatically just as an instinct, and so to add more colors can be more of a challenge for me, but I've been trying to push myself outside of my comfort zone in a lot of the different artistic things that I've been doing lately. And so even like here, adding in the teal now, I know teal is what the rest of the journal is, but to add it with the pink is kind of outside my comfort zone. But I end up enjoying the way that this looks in the end, and it felt a little bit more uncomfortable. It wasn't as natural as just going with the monochromatic, but the more that we can stretch those artistic muscles, build that strength, just like anything else, the more comfortable it's going to feel, the more natural it is, the more that our instincts can be developed over time. So this attitude of playing and trying new things and just saying, what if I do this? Those are all things that can be built over time. Some things may be instinctual for you. You were just born a little bit with that creative gene. I feel like I've always had that creativeness about me, but not everything is going to come naturally. And it could be little things or it could be big things. Color schemes are a big thing that I've been working on lately, trying to branch out of my comfort zone. If you've been tuning in and catching my informal live play sessions, I've really been playing around with color mixing and things like that. If you've missed them during the lives, I've actually been reposting the replays of those lives here on YouTube, so make sure to go check that out. I think you'll really enjoy those informal play sessions and finding out what works and what doesn't work and how we can push beyond those boundaries that we have set in our minds. I'm adding in a little bit more of that teal. I never want something to look like it was just placed on top, so I added a little bit more of that teal on top of that collage on the left side. And overall, this page is feeling a little bit more plain. I know I've added a little bit to it, but I'm trying to consider now what needs to happen. It could be a couple different things. I could keep adding art marks. I could add a little bit more of a focal element onto the right side. Looking at the page now, just on screen, I wouldn't be mad if it was just left at this point. Sometimes simple is okay, and simple can be the most effective. So don't be afraid to stop a little sooner maybe than you think that you need to, and keep it simple. You can always come back later and add more. So yeah, showing that to the camera, I actually really like how that is right now. Now, I did go a little bit beyond this, and I decided that it needed a quote on the right side. So I pulled one out here that seemed to fit for the page, and I'm going to add that on. So I feel like I have two different schools of thought of trying to push beyond what we normally do to build those layers and to see how far we can go. And sometimes the more layers and things we add, the more interesting and intriguing a page can be. The other school of thought, and these are completely opposite of each other, is leave it simple. Leave it so that it doesn't have as much going on. I think we can then play with those two different schools of thought and start training our instincts for when we should leave it and when we should push it through. So neither one are wrong, neither one is right. We just have to kind of explore and feel it out for whatever we're working on in that moment. So I hope that you guys loved today's video showing the two different ways I worked in these art journals, and I will see you next time. Have a great one.